The sky was alight with a spectacular show of magical power as two opposing forces clashed in a violent battle. The air crackled with energy as spell after spell was cast, creating a dazzling display of lights and colors that filled the sky. For centuries, these two sides had been locked in a bitter struggle for supremacy. Each side was determined to prove themselves as the most powerful magicians in the land, and they were willing to use any means necessary to achieve the goal. As the battle raged on, both sides unleashed a torrent of spells and incantations, each one more powerful than the last. The air was filled with the deafening sound of magical energy colliding, creating a symphony of destruction that echoed across the battlefield. Despite their losses, neither side was willing to give up. They continued to fight on, using every trick and tactic at their disposal to gain the upper hand. Shields of energy were cast to protect their allies, while bolts of lightning were hurled to strike down their enemies. However, as the battle wore on, it became clear that neither side was gaining the upper hand. They were evenly matched in their power, and the War of the Magicians had become a stalemate. The casualties continued to mount, and the devastation of the battlefield was evident all around. Bodies lay scattered and broken, and the ground was scorched by the intense magical energies that had been unleashed. As the sun began to set on the battlefield, the two sides withdrew, unable to continue the fight. They knew that the War of the Magicians was far from over, but for now, they had reached a temporary truce. The battle had been fierce, but neither side had been able to claim victory. The War of the Magicians would continue, with both sides determined to emerge as the ultimate victor. The battlefield was a chaotic scene, with magical energies colliding in a violent display of power. The air was filled with the deafening sound of spells being cast, each side trying to outdo the other with their magical prowess. The two sides were evenly matched, and it seemed like the battle would never end. Spells of protection and spells of destruction were cast with equal fervor, and the sky was filled with a dazzling array of colors as the two sides clashed. For hours, the battle raged on, with neither side able to gain the upper hand. The magicians were locked in a fierce struggle, each side determined to emerge victorious. Despite their best efforts, however, the battle ended in a stalemate. The War of the Magicians had been going on for centuries, and no one knew when it would end. The two sides had been at odds for so long that it seemed like the conflict would never be resolved. They had both suffered heavy losses, and yet neither side was willing to give up. As the battle raged on, the magical energies continued to collide, causing destruction and devastation all around. The ground shook with the force of the spells being cast, and the air was filled with a palpable sense of danger. Despite the stalemate, both sides continued to fight on, hoping that they would eventually emerge victorious. But as the battle dragged on, it became increasingly clear that neither side would be able to claim the upper hand. In the end, the War of the Magicians remained a stalemate, with neither side able to emerge as the victor. The battle had been fierce, and the casualties were high, but the conflict showed no signs of coming to an end. The war between the two sides had been raging on for centuries, causing destruction and chaos in the magical realm. The magicians on both sides were equally determined to emerge as the victor, and neither side was willing to give up. After hours of fighting, with neither side able to gain the upper hand, the magicians finally decided to have one final showdown to determine the winner. The tension was palpable as the two sides prepared for the ultimate battle. As the two sides clashed, the sky was filled with a dazzling array of colors, as spells of protection and destruction were used in equal measure. The air was thick with magical energy, causing the ground to shake with each spell cast. Despite their best efforts, the two sides remained evenly matched, with neither side able to gain the upper hand. The battle had been fierce, and the casualties were high, but in the end, the War of the Magicians had come to an end. The two sides had reached an agreement, and the magical realm was safe once more. The magicians on both sides had fought with all their might, and the battle had finally come to a close. The War of the Magicians had lasted for centuries, but now it was over. The magical realm could finally begin to heal, and the magicians could start to rebuild what had been destroyed. The two sides had come to an agreement, and they would now work together to ensure that peace would be maintained in the magical realm for years to come. The aftermath of the battle was devastating, with the magical realm left in ruins. The sky was still filled with remnants of the dazzling colors that had erupted during the fierce magical duel. The War of the Magicians had been a long and bloody conflict, leaving the magical realm with scars that may never fully heal. Despite the end of the war, the damage was already done. The two sides had used every magical trick in the book to gain the upper hand, resulting in widespread destruction and loss of life. The once thriving magical realm was now a shadow of its former self. The two sides had fought for centuries, each determined to emerge as the victor. The War of the Magicians had come to an end, but the magical realm had paid a heavy price for the conflict. The realm had been weakened by the war, and it would take years of hard work and effort to rebuild what had been destroyed. The scars left by the war would never fully disappear, and the magical realm would always bear the memories of the destruction caused by the conflict. However, there was hope for the future. The magicians on both sides had agreed to work together to rebuild the magical realm and ensure that peace would be maintained. The War of the Magicians may have ended, but the magical realm would never be the same. The cost of the conflict had been high, but the realm could now start the long process of healing and rebuilding. With the magicians working together, the realm could start to regain its former glory, and the memories of the conflict would slowly start to fade away. As the two sides began the arduous process of rebuilding the magical realm, they knew that it would not be an easy task. The war had left behind a trail of destruction, and the magical realm was in desperate need of repair. The two sides worked tirelessly to repair the damage caused by the war, using their magic to heal the wounds of the realm. Slowly but surely, the magical realm began to take shape once more. The once destroyed landscapes began to flourish, and the magical creatures returned to their homes. The two sides worked together to rebuild the infrastructure of the magical realm, constructing new buildings and magical monuments. Despite the devastation caused by the war, the magical realm remained a place of wonder and magic. The two sides had learned a valuable lesson from the war, and they knew that they must work together to ensure that such a conflict would never happen again. As the magical realm began to flourish once more, the legacy of the War of the Magicians lived on, serving as a reminder of the importance of cooperation and unity in times of crisis. With the truce in place, the two sides set out to rebuild the magical realm. The task was daunting, but the two sides worked together to restore the realm to its former glory. The magical creatures that had been driven away by the war began to return, and the magical plants and trees began to flourish once more. The air was filled with the sweet scent of magic, and the magical realm was alive once more. The two sides had learned to work together, and as they did, they began to see the benefits of cooperation. The magical realm was stronger than ever before, and the two sides began to realize that they could achieve more by working together than by fighting each other. They set out to establish a new era of magic, one that was marked by cooperation and unity. The legacy of the War of the Magicians was now firmly established, but it was no longer a legacy of destruction and chaos. It was a legacy of cooperation and unity, of two sides coming together to rebuild a world that had been torn apart by conflict. The magical realm was now a shining example of what could be achieved when two sides set aside their differences and worked towards a common goal. As the magical realm flourished, the two sides came to live in harmony. They shared their knowledge and their magic, and together they continued to explore the mysteries of the magical realm. The War of the Magicians had been a dark time in the realm's history, but it had also been a time of growth and learning. The realm had emerged from the war stronger than ever before, and the two sides had learned to live in harmony, forever changing the course of the magical realm's history.